Yo, I'm Troy, this is TM Fitness. Let's have a look at what science has to say about the kettlebell swing, shall we? So, Pavel Tsatsouline, who is the famous hardstyle dragon door Russian kettlebell coach, claims that it is superior to 99% of the sophisticated strength and conditioning programs out there. So I thought we'd explore that a little bit and see if he is right. So the aims of this little research review, if you like, are to review the evidence associated with claims for and against the swing. Does the swing develop strength? How good is the swing for power production? And is the swing bad for your back? So Lake and Lauder in 2012 compared the kettlebell swing versus the jump squat and measured half squat and vertical jump height. So those were the markers that they were measuring to see if there were any benefits to doing a kettlebell swing versus a jump squat exercise routine. So they got 24 trained men with an age of 18 to 24. And when I say trained men, these had, I think, at least 6 months experience with resistance training and kettlebells. And they had to undergo like a familiarity process to ensure that they were using the correct technique and everything. So over the 12 weeks, they did twice weekly 12-minute swing routines, which was a 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off protocol using a 12 kilogram kettlebell, which isn't that heavy really. And the other group did jump squats, either weighted or unweighted. So the weighted ones were 4 sets of 3 reps at 60% of 1 rep max, and the unweighted ones were 8 sets of 6 reps. So the outcome of their study was that the kettlebell swings were pretty good. They showed a 12% increase in maximal strength compared with the jump squats, which demonstrated a 7.7% increase. And obviously the max strength, as I said, was measured using a half squat exercise. The kettlebell swing showed a 15% increase in explosive strength compared with a 24% increase using the jump squats. They measured the explosive strength using a vertical jump. So it makes sense that a jump squat would have a more functional carryover to a vertical jump than a kettlebell swing. So not surprising there, but you can see that the kettlebell swing did have some decent outcomes. The same pairing did another paper looking at the maximal strength development using a kettlebell swing, and they used heavier kettlebells here, so 16, 24 and 32 kilogram kettlebells, 2 sets of 10 reps with each, and these were 16 trained males with a minimum again of 6 months experience. So the conclusion was that it wasn't optimal for developing maximal strength, but there were again some power improvements, and they concluded that it's good for power, the kettlebell swing being good for power development in athletes who partake in power-based sports. Power-based sports, if you're not too familiar with that terminology, would basically be most team sports, any sport that requires like a turn of pace or any kind of explosive movement, martial arts, pro wrestling, rugby, that kind of stuff. And in case you're unaware, the type of kettlebell swing was the hardstyle swing. So this is taken from one of the papers, and this is a demonstration of the technique employed. So it's that hardstyle hip hinge type kettlebell swing rather than the squat type or the weird CrossFit overhead type swing, which isn't really a swing, it's more of a snatch. So because those two studies looked at males, I thought it'd be a good idea to see if females or how females respond to this type of training. Now, theoretically, there shouldn't be any difference. If you take a female and a male, and they're both the same height and the same weight and the same level of leanness, and they do the same style of training, the improvements in strength shouldn't be vastly different. So this paper by Holmstrup looked at 20 healthy females aged 18 to 25 with limited resistance training and kettlebell experience, so probably more used to cardiovascular training than strength training. They did a kettlebell swing versus a stiff leg deadlift So obviously the stiff leg deadlift, a much slower eccentric hamstring and hip contraction type exercise. So similar in terms of muscle recruitment, the type of muscles and the patterning of the movement, but different in the way the exercise is performed. So as I say, the deadlift a lot slower, the kettlebell swing being a lot more explosive. Again, they used the Tabata protocol, which is a 20-second on, 20-second off, 8 rounds, so it's like 4 minutes of maximal efforts twice a week. And the conclusion was that there were no improvements in sprint speed. So the marker that they were measuring here was how the improvements in power from using a kettlebell can transfer over to sprint speed in, you know, just normal, everyday, reasonably healthy people. And there were no improvements. So the lesson there is, if you want to run faster, do more run training. Interestingly, though, they did measure vertical jump, and there was a 4% increase in power output. So again, kettlebells are good for increasing explosive strength. Then I looked at another paper here by Fortner et al. From 2014, a Tabata versus traditional resistance training style workout. So again, the Tabata is 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 8 rounds. The traditional resistance training style was 4 sets for reps with a 90-second rest interval, and they matched the total volume of reps. So whatever the average total reps were for the Tabatas, that was broken down and matched in the traditional RT style training intervention. And the results were that RPE, which is your rate of perceived exertion, was higher with the kettlebell Tabatas versus the traditional style workout, which you'd expect because the Tabata is a maximal effort, and it was a higher VO2 max and blood lactate threshold as well with the Tabata style training, which all makes sense. You kind of expect to see those kind of improvements with that style of training. So I thought, are kettlebells a decent cardio exercise? Are they a decent tool for producing cardiovascular adaptations? So Halsey et al. In 2012 did this study where they looked at the difference between doing kettlebell swings and treadmill running, and they concluded, I mean, you can pause this and read the quote there if you like in full, but basically, as you would expect, in terms of cardiovascular capacity, treadmill running is better than kettlebell swings. And interestingly, RPE was matched in these, so that both sets of trainees were working at the same level of perceived intensity, and this was with quite a low weight kettlebell. I think it was an 8 kilogram kettlebell, so again, not very heavy. But because it's rate of perceived exertion, that wouldn't matter. If you had a heavier kettlebell, you would just be moving it slower and still achieving the same rate of perceived exertion. But when comparing the kettlebell swing to the treadmill running, it was inferior, but they did conclude that most of the people practicing this did exceed 85% of their maximum heart rate, which means that kettlebell swings are a useful cardiovascular tool and maybe a decent alternative to stationary cycling and running for exercise variation. And then I looked at the question about back pain. So are kettlebells bad or good for your back? Coleman in 2017 looked at the lumbo-pelvic pain thresholds, and they used a pressure threshold, pain pressure threshold test. So when you apply a bit of pressure to certain muscles before and after the exercise. So they had 60 participants. The females used an 8 kilogram kettlebell and the males used a 12 kilogram kettlebell. So again, quite lightweights. And again, they used a Tabata style protocol. So the muscles assessed were the paravertebral muscles, the QL or quadratus lumborum, which is the little lateral flexor at the base of the back, either side of the spine, and the piriformis, which is that external rotator in your bum, one of the part of the deep lying glute complex of muscles. And all participants experienced a significant reduction in pain pressure threshold post-exercise. This was a short-term benefit, but it was a benefit. So the conclusion is that kettlebell swings are a potentially useful prescription for long-term low back pain sufferers. And if we're talking about back pathologies, then it would be very remiss of me not to mention any of the research done by Stu McGill. So back in 2012, he looked at kettlebell swings, kettlebell snatch, and the bottoms up loaded carry, looking at levels of muscle activation and lumbar disc shear forces as well. So again, you can pause this and look at that if you like. The description's all in the picture there, but in that table. But basically, there were high levels of muscle activation through the glute complex and the lats in particular. There were two types of swings. There was a standard hardstyle swing and a swing with kime. Kime is a martial arts style technique. Apparently this was a method that was used by Bruce Lee when he was developing his 1-inch punch. So it's kind of a muscle pulsing. You pause and brace with the kettlebell at 0 gravity for a moment before bringing it back down into the swing. And that showed increased levels of muscle activation. So the practical applications, according to Stu McGill, are that so he says here the message for coaches is that the kettlebell offers several unique training opportunities. For example, the opportunity to train rapid muscle contraction relaxation cycles, emphasizing posterior chain power development about the hip. However, there is a large shear to compression load ratio on the lumbar spine. So he errs on the side of caution here. Stu McGill is a little bit of a movement pessimist. He's very, very cautious, shall we say, around lower back issues. So if you are extension intolerant and you know this, then the kettlebell swing may not be right for you. But in my personal experience, those people are few and far between, and I have never incorporated the kettlebell swing into a person's routine without it benefiting them in at least one of the areas already discussed here. Of course, if you're a coach, you will want to assess your clients for that correctly, and if you don't know how to do that, refer them out to someone who can. But it's pretty safe to say that for most healthy people, the kettlebell swing is going to be of benefit. So to summarise, the kettlebell swing is good for power development. It's useful for athletes in power-based sports. It's a competent cardiovascular alternative for exercise variety, just to keep things interesting. And you may have some benefits for lower back pain. As I say, my personal experience with it is that the kettlebell swing has massively helped me with lower back issues and has done so for many of my clients. So that is my brief rundown. Brief look at some of the evidence available on the kettlebell swing. Now, if you're interested in kettlebell training and you want to get better at it, or you just want a decent structured workout routine, my 6-week kettlebell challenge, which is basically a 6-week progressive workout program that aims to get you from beginner to intermediate in a relatively short space of time. It's effective. It's been used by several people who have got, or numerous people who have got good results from it. Some of them are complete exercise novices. Some of them were experienced exercisers getting back into a routine. Some of them were endurance athletes who benefited from the strength and power increases. So if you're interested in that, go down into the comments. There's a link for that there. And while you're down there, why not click on the link to my Facebook page, follow me on Facebook, and keep up to date with regular updates there. And then that is the references if you want to look at those, and that's just to prove that I have done my due diligence. And that's it. This has been fun. I hope you've got something out of this. Please like this video, please subscribe to my channel, place a comment below, and I will speak to you all again soon. Laters.